Bear down, Bears fans. Another edition of the Chicago Bears podcast coming your way. Pat the designer, Courtney Cronin, live here at Halas. A lot to take from today, Courtney. A lot of conversation. Got to talk with a ton of the assistant coaches and got some really good nuggets from just about all of them. Think we got to break all of that down on today's episode, man, because there's some takes that are going to be interesting here. There was some quotes from Dennis Allen that I thought were very interesting. I'll tell you what, though, my Chicagoan happy take from today was you could feel in the press conference how happy Antoine Randall is to be just back home. I mean, that was amazing.
It's so cool. You know, he grew up here, and to get to put like a Bears hoodie on, he said, like, still gets him juiced. Yeah. And that even when he walked in the building for the first time last week or a couple weeks ago when they came back for the offseason program, it's hard to hide that emotion. So, I mean, it's cool. I mean, his energy was palpable from the very start, talking with Eric Bieniemy. I know Al Harris gave that impression across too. So very clearly, Ben Johnson hires coaches. Majority of these coaches seem to have the same sort of personality that he does.
Yeah. It was a good day, I think, just in general, talking about a lot of the coaches. I want to start here with some of the things we heard from Dennis Allen, both at the podium and down in which went very smoothly today, down in the little breakfast room. You know, we're walking around.
It was a good setup.
It was a really good setup. I thought that was perfect for the Chicago Bears. Let me actually get my ad reads up here so that we can pay some bills. But the one thing that I think, looking at Dennis Allen from today, and something I thought that scheme-wise is going to be very important here heading into the draft, was when I asked him about, some of the pressure on the interior, and he said, I believe that the pressure from the interior is kind of more important than that pressure coming from the outside, which I think is kind of obvious, right? Pressure in the quarterback's face, but it is a surprise because all we've talked about for 2 years now is that pass rusher opposite Montez Sweat, the pass rusher opposite Montez Sweat. Doesn't sound like they're looking for a perfect fix at that pass rusher opposite Montez Sweat, Courtney.
It's interesting because I just wrote about this earlier in the week about why this defensive tackle class is as deep as it is. I know Mel Kiper has 31 with draftable grades. It's Mason Graham and then kind of everybody else. It's not going to be like 2019 all over again where you had 6 taken in the first round. But because teams in this style defense are prioritizing that interior pass rush. You saw it in Philly. You saw it with the Kansas City Chiefs in the Super Bowl 2 years ago. Aaron Donald in the game-wrecking play that he made in 4th down in the Rams and Bengals Super Bowl game. Like that's like you have the shortest path to the quarterback. Yeah. So that's where you get the initial push, and then you allow your defensive ends to have an easier path to come around and get after the quarterback. And we prioritize the defensive end position so much in the NFL. That's where the money is. That's where the big names are. But the guys in the interior are the ones who are making the edge guys able to, to get their work easier and to have a better path, because when you keep the quarterback high in the pocket, what Dennis Allen was talking about with Grady Jarrett specifically, like, you're more disruptive. And when you can be disruptive, like, initially, because the quarterback, there's like Ryan Poles and I talked about this in Palm Beach a few weeks ago. It's you want to win the 2 yards under center. Like that's the area you want to win. And that's why if you have rotational pass rushers, if you have like a good rotational pass rush from the interior, keeping guys fresh, you're going to be able to generate more pressure on the quarterback. And I think that fits into the Dennis Allen attacking style defense of what they want to do up front and getting after the quarterback. They're not trying to be playing, it's going to look very different than it did last year. Like there's a pass rush that's not just going to be reliant upon, your 4 down linemen. I think it's going to be interesting to see what they do. And even hearing Dennis Allen talk about Kyler Gordon, because we talked to him about the contract extension, which I know we'll get into, but there's a lot there's a lot to take away from what they talked about as far as the type of players they're looking for, specifically when it came to the defensive tackles. So it's interesting to kind of hear a little bit more on why. This is the first time we heard from Dennis Allen since they signed Grady Jarrett as a free agent. They paid a lot. They paid a lot for him, and he's 31 years old, coming off an ACL tear 2 years ago. They still made that a very big priority this offseason to improve the interior pass rush. And that not only, helps Montez Sweat, that helps Javon Dexter, it'll help Andrew Billings. And I just kind of get the sense in hearing Dennis Allen and Jeremy Garrett, the defensive line coach, talk about what they expect from the line, it's not that it's like a different mindset from last year, because obviously, like, see quarterback, get quarterback.
Yeah.
That's what you have to do in the NFL. But
Yes.
I think they're going to be put in a better position to do that based on the schemes, based on the games that they play up front, the stunts, all of those things that you saw in Dennis Allen's defenses before. Like, it just felt like they had an easier way to get it done that we did not see based on how they ran, with with these players last year, different defense, but how they attempted to do it and improve their pass rush the last 2 seasons.
Yeah, I thought it validated too, right? Some of the conversations that we've been having pre-draft, and I know Matt Miller had a part in the Bears portion of the article about what every single team ends up
Mhm.
needing, and he talked about how, listen, don't be surprised if the Bears were to go with an Ashton Genty at 10, if they don't try to trade back in, and that they value that interior defensive line position higher than they value the edge. And I think it validates not only that, but to me it validates having a defense that feels like it's in the modern NFL, right?
Yeah,
I love what
absolutely.
Flus did with at times, right? And there were moments where you go, okay, like this makes sense for who this defense or what this defensive identity wants to be. But let's be real, the prevent style, the
Mhm.
sitting back, the trying to let the offense come to you and then dictating what they do, that works if you have Hall of Famers on the other side of the ball and Brian Urlacher and Lance Briggs, right? It's a lot tougher when you've got the team that we had last season. I think that having more of an attacking style this year is going to benefit that, and it just feels much more modern for the players that we have in the building.
Yeah, and it fits. Like, it fits the guys that they have, and knowing what's going to be expected of them. I think it makes their jobs easier when you know from the very start that this is going to be a completely different mindset that you have to have as a player when you are playing in this defense. And I think it seems like there's a bigger challenge ahead of them, but like a more tangible goal when you are in a more attacking style defense that feels like there's a clear objective of within the pass rush, and that it starts in the middle. That's kind of where they've been trending. I mean, at least that's Ryan Poles, like, the 2 picks that he spent on interior defensive
Yeah.
linemen, Javon Dexter and Zach Pickens 2 years ago, and knowing, that 2 years later in free agency, he went after Grady Jarrett. He got Dio Odenabo, but like Dio can play inside too on certain packages. So it's very clear that the way that this Bears team views where the pass rush needs to come from initially it seems like everybody's on the same page with that,
Yeah.
starting from kind of how like Dennis Allen relayed what he views as success for the pass rush and the defensive line.
Yeah, 100%. I want to continue to talk about some of the comments DA made today. Do want to let you guys know today's episode of the Chicago Bears podcast is brought to you by the Advantage Dealer Group. Find your next Chevy, Toyota, or Acura and drive off in under 60 minutes, or they'll make your first car payment. Also brought to you by the Hard Rock Casino in Northern Indiana. Las Vegas style gaming, just 30 minutes from Soldier Field, exit 6, right off I-80. 94. You kind of touched on this a little bit, Courtney, but the conversation around Kyler Gordon, I
Sure.
think, is an extremely interesting one, because it was the first time that I think we'd heard right about a possibility of Kyler Gordon moving around, playing, of course, that nickel corner position. But how does he fit in possibly at safety if you were to do things the way that we saw them down in New Orleans? What was your takeaway from those comments? And do you think that Kyler Gordon, we're going to see some time with him at safety this season?
I think he's going to move around. Like, obviously, teams are in nickel a lot more in the modern era of the NFL. So he's on the field a lot, but can they get him on the field more?
Yeah.
Like, can he play outside corner? That's where we've seen him at times throughout the first 3 seasons of his Bears career when he hasn't been at nickel. He's comfortable there. We haven't seen him at safety. So they're trying to figure out what's the best fit. And of course, I know Dennis Allen didn't want to talk about any comparisons necessarily for Kyler Gordon, but you think about players that Dennis Allen has coached at different points of his career, and the Honey Badger came back to
Yeah.
New Orleans. I believe it was for 2 or 3 seasons under Dennis Allen after he left Arizona, or it was rather, I think it was Kansas, it was Arizona, Kansas City,
yep.
and then the Saints. Like, that's the type of player, when I think of like the traffic cop that you are when you were at the nickel, like you're trying to do so many different things. You're directing traffic while playing football, more or less.
Right.
That's a role that he did so well. And there are comparisons. I asked Kyler about this the other day when he was mentioning, signing the deal and wanting to be in Dennis Allen's defense, and the vote of confidence that this gives him, that they, without even having seen him play, in person. They watched obviously all of his film and
Yeah,
figured
yeah,
he's the
yeah.
right fit. But that's why that meant a lot. He's a cornerstone of this defense
5'9",
already.
190.
Like that, right? Like,
Yeah.
aren't there some comparisons that you
I
can
was sitting there.
naturally
I feel like the honey badger was a little bit taller than Kyler, but no, 5'9", 190.
like
They're right there.
body fit wise alone? There's like a natural comparison, but I also think that just given like how unique he was in the slot, he can play a lot of different positions. And I mean, he is a little bit older now, and usually you see older cornerbacks transition to playing safety.
Yeah.
I don't think they're there, obviously, with Kyler Gordon. I think they're trying to find a way that could benefit them if there are health issues with Jaquan Brisker, but also using this guy's physicality. Kyler plays up in the box a lot. He likes to tackle. Like, I just look at this as Dennis Allen saying there's untapped potential here, and we're going to get the most out of this guy that we just paid $30 million to make him the highest paid nickel corner in the NFL, because there's a really good chance that he'll be able to take his game to the next level, even though he's already been pretty good in the first 3 seasons.
Yeah, and what I love about it too is, right, Kyler Gordon a little bit bigger. It's weight wise about 10 pounds difference, 200 for Kyler Gordon, 190 for the Honey Badger, Tyrann Mathieu. But the part that it would give Kyler more of an advantage almost too is 6 feet tall for Kyler Gordon, right? He comes in a little bit bigger. He would be, and Dennis Allen talked about this, he'd be one of the better coverage safeties in the game right now. And I think the opportunity for him to do something like that, I wonder how well it would work or how quickly you could get it to work, because it's not something that Kyler has done. But I do think that if you could get him comfortable in that position, there's no bad situation to having more Kyler Gordon on the field. And I also think it creates the question mark that most of us are coming into this season asking, what does it mean for Jaquan Brisker if all of a sudden you add in Kyler Gordon into that safety rotation?
I think it's more of a, like, I don't know if Jaquan's role would be threatened by any stretch. I think it's certainly, if he can play it, it'd be good depth to have back there, like high quality depth. I think just as a nickel, being able to be versatile at that position to play a lot of different spots, they can call on you in a lot of, if they want to run, more nickel, more dime packages, like seeing how many defensive backs they can get on the field, especially in coverage. If there's situations where they feel like they're kind of gambling between like their 2 outside corners and having Kyler out there, I think you try to find a way to get him out there no matter what. And that's like, obviously it has to work.
Yeah,
like they have to like
100%.
test it out to see like how he fares when being asked to do different things in secondary. But the versatility there, the high ceiling, he's only 25, 26 years old. I think there's a lot to like, that Dennis Allen is just like really excited to like, put his mad scientist hat on and try to figure out, how do I make this guy the most well-rounded, can't have him off the field sort of DB that I can.
Yeah, and I think that was the big takeaway when talking with him, right, one-on-one down here, was Tom Thayer asked him about Kyler Gordon possibly playing 2 spots, and his response was, I don't want him standing next to me on the sideline.
Yeah, like, good point.
I don't want to see Kyler Gordon standing next to me on the sideline. I'd like him to be out there as much as possible. So if he can do it, it's something that we would love to explore. And I think it's going to be interesting to see kind of how Kyler adapts to that. But the one thing we know, he's a hard hitter. He's somebody who, if he gets a chance to get a coverage interception or just line up and have 5 yards ahead to lay somebody out, Kyler Gordon, somebody's going to take that opportunity. Sure. I think that's going to be fun to see. Let us know how you guys feel in the comments below. Would you like to see Kyler Gordon with a little bit of safety action in his career? That'd be interesting to see. Something else I thought that was very interesting from the one-on-ones. I do want to kind of get into those, and we can still talk about the podium too, but I think there was some really good nuggets that came out of it. And just starting with Dennis Allen again here. A very definitive conversation when we were talking about Austin Booker on, what can he do well? How does he play? How does he fit into the system? He was somebody that we thought we'd see a little bit more of, and maybe he would get unlocked here in Dennis Allen's defense. Seems like Dennis Allen feels like he's a little too light, little bit too small. He says he likes his defensive ends coming in at about 280. Austin Booker right now is at about 240. Daniel Hardy kind of in that same boat. But another name that I thought was interesting that you brought up, Montez Sweat is 262. I think the Bears have him listed as. Do we have the defensive ends on this team right now that Dennis Allen actually wants? Or could that be a focus later in the draft?
I think that you look at, like, where Dennis Allen came from, and of course Cam Jordan's big dude. Granderson, big dude. Like, he wants the mold that made his defenses successful in New Orleans, and I get that, and even before that with the Raiders. So you're going to try to mold those players that you currently have, which is what this time of year is for. That's their time of year to be in the weight room. So I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, Montez Sweat is a pretty physically imposing, intimidating individual. He's 6'6", but can he? And he's muscular as hell. But like, can he put on more size? Can he put on more weight to play at, like, I don't know if he's ever played at 280 before, if that's something that he's comfortable with. It'd be interesting to see what his offseason program has looked like. But to the name you mentioned, obviously Austin Booker has to put on weight. He's all legs right now. Like, he's got a very long, lean, like lower body. And
long arm, short torso. Very interesting.
We knew that was going to be the plan for him, though, because he was a developmental 4th round pick last year, or a 5th round pick when they got him. Like, there was going to be that adjustment period. So this is going to be when we see him out there for OTAs. What does he look like? What has he been doing in the weight room during the off season, away from here, and then getting back in Halas Hall? Because if a coach is asking you to play at a certain weight, there's going to be responsibilities for you that are assigned to, like, different style of play, fundamentals, techniques that, if you're playing at a different weight, one that's not capable of handling that, you might have a harder time playing the position in this defense. So there's a lot at stake for these guys this offseason to get, like, to the physical state that they need to be, at least the way that, like, Dennis Allen sees them being successful in this defense.
Yeah, the one thing that I will give Dennis Allen credit for, and I think it does go to the Montez conversation, is he said, I'm willing to give up pounds for strength, right? I'm willing to give up pounds for power. If you've got the power at the weight you're playing and you're able to come in here and get the job done, who am I to go out there and say, I need you to be 20 more pounds heavier here? If you can do the work that we're asking you to do, that's the important part of all of this. And that's where I think, and we've heard it a couple of times, right? That's where, to me, this coaching staff really takes on a different feel, is even hearing Declan Doyle talk today at the podium when he was talking about Caleb playing under center. It was, yes, we're going to try and see if we can get Caleb comfortable under center. If not, we pivot.
It's a big pivot.
I was very surprised to hear that when we heard Ben Johnson kind of say, hey, look, we want to get this guy under center and make him comfortable. But it seems like it's a coaching staff that's willing to, all right, let's try this road. If this road does not work, we have to do what's going to get us wins this year. It is not an option of fit our system or don't.
Well, I also don't think it's an option of, like, well, Caleb, like, they're going to make him do that. And I think he's been working on it to get his footwork right, to get the timing right, like syncing it up with his receivers. I don't think there's going to be any way that he's not under center, because it's not that they're going to, like, square peg round hole this, but this is what this offense is based on, because that dictates play action, that dictates the run game. I personally don't think Caleb has a choice being an under center quarterback. I get what Declan Doyle's saying. He's saying all the right things. Of, we're going to try to work within their strengths too, but I don't think Ben Johnson takes this job if he doesn't think that Caleb can run the offense the way that, because it's Ben's offense, the way that he, like, has to in order to be successful. I don't see it, like, the other way around.
Yeah. No, I get it. I think what is interesting, listen, the work hasn't been put in yet. Nobody's been cut yet, right? That's usually when you start to find out, oh, he didn't make the mold, or he didn't fit what they were trying to do or what they were looking for. But it is something that Ben Johnson said coming in, right? Hey, we have our standard, and we're going to, if a player is good enough, we will fit ourselves to what he does well, to his strengths. I think that's something that the previous regime just, it really struggled with, where it was, you got to do it our way or it's not going to work. And there were a bunch of pieces here that didn't do it their way well enough, I guess, or they didn't coach it well enough. And that's why we're in this position with an entirely new coaching staff. It's refreshing to hear if that player is good enough at that thing, we're willing to do that. I like that, hear that, because of the Montez Sweat situation where he's not meeting the weight. I think it's kind of tough to do with the quarterback position. That's hard to be like, we're going to make you an under center quarterback. It didn't work. All right, we're going back to shotgun. Like, now you're changing everything in the offense.
Yeah, I think that, like, that's more of this is just kind of like saying the right thing.
Coach talk, low coach talk.
But it's, I would imagine that, like, there were conversations about is he capable of doing this? I think anybody's capable of going under center. It's not a straight drop back game anymore anyways. It's just that Caleb doesn't have a whole ton of reps with it. So can they find ways to incorporate more of that with him in the offense? Absolutely. It's going to be on him, though, to make it work. And I guess it'll be some strange foreshadowing if it doesn't work. And we can go back to like this time in April. Well, the coaching staff did say that they would, go away from it or try something else. It didn't work if they keep trying to force something through. But I don't think that they view it as he's not going to be capable.
Yes.
Of doing
No.
that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I feel like the way that they talk about him being an under center quarterback, it's just that he had 84 snaps doing it as a rookie. He had 7 snaps doing it in college.
Yeah.
Like, there's just not a lot to go off of there. But he, QBR, yards per attempt, completion percentage actually went up in the very limited sample size that you saw with him being under center last year versus him being in shotgun.
I do wonder if Caleb knows what EPA per play is now. I remember when he was at the podium, and I think Pat asked him. I was like, he has no idea what EPA per play. He was like, yeah, we'll get the technique down and get it right, and we're gonna make it happen. I was like, perfect answer, Caleb. Was there anything when you got a chance to talk with Declan in the room one-on-one here that you kind of took away from what he was saying down there?
It's interesting because like he was talking about interviewing with Ben Johnson for the first time, and he felt like Ben hated him. Like he did an interview like years ago before he followed Sean Payton to Denver and had a chance to like spend some time out there coaching tight ends, but initially had interviewed with like that staff that Dan Campbell put together. And he did not feel like Ben liked him. He's like, Ben kept like pressing him on the details and like really trying to like, get inside his head about like, why is this work this way? Like explain it like down to the very like minutia.
Yeah.
And apparently he did really well in the interview. It's just that the way that it came across from the way that Declan was talking about it with Ben Johnson being like the evaluator there was that Ben was really hard on him. And I think that that's when he mentioned upstairs, like Ben's got a chip on his shoulder, he comes in every day with an edge. I think that's the part because like it sounds like you can just kind of glaze over when people are talking about like fundamentals, technique, all this. If you're trying to pull off a lot of trickeration, a lot of gimmicky gadget stuff, rather is probably the more appropriate word in this offense, you have to be so zeroed in on the details. And I think someone like Ben who can, he can be like he's kind of a savant in that area of like the details, being able to pull off stumble bum, like where you just are timing up the tripping element perfectly to sell the fake and all of those things. That's like those are the things I think that separates him as a play caller, and he wants his staff to have that too. So whatever happened in that interview years ago, now it clearly worked out because he's his offensive coordinator, and we don't know exactly yet like what are the day-to-day responsibilities, because Declan's going to be handling a lot of the grunt work, more or less, as Ben Johnson's trying to be the head coach of not just the offense, but the defense too. He's like going to be relying a lot on Declan to do the day-to-day stuff and like being with the offense and installing the game plan, all of those things that Ben's just not going to have time to. So they're probably getting at least like a start on it now to like figure out what it's going to look like. But I still don't even think that they know how that balance is going to work between the two of them in season.
I'm just glad to see Declan Doyle alive. I mean, we saw Ben Johnson for like 40 days into the job, and it was like, oh, he has aged. He looked like a president after 4 years. I remember my guy on the breeze, Jordan Chase, he was like, we haven't heard from Declan Doyle. Is he still with us?
Yeah.
Like, is he okay? Like, he looked good. He looked good up there today. I think with hearing that, though, the details, that's the one thing that I think today, it almost oozed out of every coordinator, for lack of a better word, where it's like, we're talking with Ben. Like the message that they're giving us, what's the message you want to send to this guy? How do you want to it sounds like everything Ben Johnson has said when we've gotten a chance to talk to him. I don't know if it's because he's militant. I don't know if it's because he's really beaten into these guys already. Like, this is how you will answer questions, different things like that. I feel more so though, like it's a message that they're all on board with, and they understand, okay, this is how we're moving. A lot of these guys have been with Ben already.
Sure.
And I think that plays into it as well. But just the conversation, hearing how Antoine Randall talks about, how he's going to deal with the wide receivers here. Hearing Al Harris, when I got a chance to talk with him one-on-one, talking about how he's going to deal with Tyree Stevenson and how he's going to deal with Jalen Johnson, moving around and different things like that. Like, it all feels like, okay, this is a cohesive message of like, this is not going to take a year and a half to get together. We have to win and win now. And that's the feeling.
Like what Declan Doyle said about, I mean, he's like Ben Johnson's teaching his coaches how he wants it coached now, because it's a much better thing to get that part out of the way in April versus it's June, it's mini camp, you're about to break it. Your coaches are still not coaching it the right way that Ben Johnson wants. And you break for 6 weeks and you come back, it's training camp, you're starting over from square one. It's not that they don't have time to waste. It just feels like they're being very efficient with their time.
Yes.
There's nothing at stake right now. I almost felt like asking, like, hey, like, you guys aren't playing a game until September. But, because when I asked Antoine Randall about that whole same idea about Ben Johnson having an edge and, like, what does that look like? He's like, he treats everybody like they're the next opponent on the schedule.
Yeah.
And I'm, you think about that and that intensity, like, it's April. Do you carry that same intensity all the way through the off season? It sounds like there's places where you do. And, holding yourself to a standard that the way that I coach it, I want to be able to have like a version of me in every room, especially on offense. I mean, I'm sure he's letting Dennis Allen handle the defense. That's why you hire somebody who has the experience that Dennis Allen has as a coordinator and as a head coach. But for Ben, if his offense is going to work somewhere else, and they are trying to make a lot of the Detroit things happen here. I mean, I think Antoine Randall had talked about it and JT Barrett talked about it with, quarterbacks, and of course, like, making the system work here. It can, if it's coached the right way.
Yeah.
Like, is it, you're taking an offense, it's not going to be a carbon copy, but there's going to be a whole lot that looks similar because you have, the guy who made whatever the scheme is, this variation of the scheme that he's gotten under Adam Gase and other people that he's coached under all these years. He's making it his own in a different place.
Yeah.
And so if you want that to work, you got to make sure that the coaches are coaching it the right way and that the messaging is the same to the players, especially to Caleb. I think that's going to be really critical. Still don't exactly know what that looks like as far as, Ben's like, you got to limit the voices the quarterback has, like, the message to him. Well, it still sounds like Ben Johnson, Declan Doyle, JT Barrett, Press Taylor. That's how many that were talking to Caleb last year, including the pass game coordinator.
But I think even to that though, Courtney, right? Like, from everyone we're talking to, even talking to Press Taylor today, even sitting with Al Harris, like I said, like, even sitting with Richard Smith, the message isn't different. It's not, well, this is how we feel about this situation. This is how we feel. Mm-hmm. Right. Like, remember last year when the Tyreek situation is a very special situation. It's a ball gets tipped, they lose the game because of that tip. But how oh wow, I really move on from the staff, don't I? It was how the offensive coordinator, Shane Waldron, looked at it was different than how Flus looked at it. Was different than how, even Dan Quinn on the other team looked at it, right? Like, all of these different voices are having a different opinion. Jalen Johnson goes on the radio, is like, I probably would have called a timeout in that situation. There's all these different messages being put out there. Imagine that just in the quarterback room. At least I know it's very early and it's nothing has been started. A football hasn't even been snapped. They haven't even been on the field with these guys yet. But the fact that, like, everyone we talk to is preaching that same message, I would think that probably makes it easier with where, yes, there is the same amount of voices, but if every voice is telling you the same thing, you're really hearing one voice, and it seems like that voice is Ben Johnson.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to think of it, because Ben's got to make sure that the way that things are being delivered down to Caleb is seamless. You can't afford to have your quarterback who, has to probably rethink the way that he did some things last year, or kind of retrain himself to do things. Yeah. Don't overcomplicate that. Don't throw another wrench into it where he's having to, like, decipher from the different people he's hearing from. So I think that's a big thing they're going to have to solve in the offseason about, like, what is being delivered to the quarterback and how it's being delivered, like the type of message.
I think even the conversation and to talk to, the point that you made about how he's probably letting Dennis Allen kind of do his own thing, which I do think he is. But I got a chance to talk with Richard Smith, which maybe one of the greatest 5 minutes of football conversation I've had with somebody, because he literally was just, like, talking about how proud he was of his son, started crying.
Yeah, Travis Smith was here.
Travis Smith was here last year.
And now is in Tennessee.
Started talking about his favorite bartender in Chicago. Talked about how he used his son's name to get into a restaurant. And then the part that I thought was interesting, though, was when he talked about Ben, he was like, you guys have no idea. I've been in football a long time, and I've been around a lot of head coaches. Ben Johnson is in these defensive meeting rooms. He is coming in. He is talking to us. And Richard Smith has a very different viewpoint because he picks up the phone and can call his son and say, hey, what's going on down in Chicago? Apparently that's
Sure.
something Flus wasn't doing last season.
Interesting.
And that's something that, you know, it's not how Matt Eberflus operated. And he said it probably because he felt comfortable being with the defensive guys. And there's a lot of head coaches like that. There's a lot of successful head coaches who are like that, who just let their offensive coaches do what they do. But he said Ben's different because he makes you feel like you're important, like what you're doing is important. He comes into the linebacker room. He comes into the defensive line room, and he's being seen not just in the offensive room. Of course, he's spending more time with the offense. But that's something to me where even that little thing right now, how important that could be down the line, right? Your defensive players are feeling like we're just as important as the offensive players in Ben Johnson's eyes. I think that helps build the camaraderie of this team.
Yeah, I do too. And for someone like Ben Johnson to be as involved as he is, there's a he's having to learn how to manage that right now, because how you manage it in the spring when things are crazy in the fall, if you're on a losing streak, if you're on a winning streak, how does he divvy up his time?
Right.
Like, you know, there's all, and it's the idea, because I'm curious at some point when somebody's going to say, like, I'm not, just an offensive head coach, like I'm the head coach. I know that Flus said that to some degree last year, but you're always kind of categorized by the side of the ball that you excelled at, that got you to become a head coach. And some coaches, even like defensive coaches, for example, some that I've covered, like you never felt like they were super associated with the offense. And that's fine if you have the right people on the other side of the ball. Like, and thankfully for him, he's got Dennis Allen, who has a plethora of experience on that side of the ball, where Ben early on can focus on, making sure that the offense is on the right track. But I get the vibe from Ben, and you hear this from a lot of coaches now, of just making sure that they're in all the meetings, making sure that they are a part of the side of the ball that's not necessarily their expertise.
Yeah.
And that's what's come across, at least like early on, in hearing from Ben Johnson about how he's been able to, go between the two. I mean, even in owners meetings a couple weeks ago, somebody asked him, hey, does offense win out when you and Ryan are talking about draft picks or everything? And he's like, I love defensive players too.
Yeah.
Certainly you're going to vouch for guys that make your scheme better, but he loses game. The losses and wins and losses look the same for him, whether it's the offense that wins it or loses it, or the defense that wins it or loses it.
And I think that's the biggest difference, right? Like you can tell, right? If somebody's an offensive head coach or somebody's a defensive head coach, they're going to trust the side of the ball that they call more. We saw that a ton with Matt Eberflus, right? It's why he doesn't call a timeout in that situation versus Washington, because he's like, just get the stop. Like, if we all line up, which he's kind of right, if everybody's in the right spot, this is not a conversation. We knock the ball away or we knock the ball down and we move on. The game is over. But he trusted in that second half, that defense, a heck of a lot more than what he was doing with the offense, until it got down to the point where it was like, well, if we don't score some points, we're going to lose this game. All right, we got to be a little bit more aggressive here. And then it seemed like all of a sudden the reins were let off of Caleb Williams. That happened a ton with Flus, happened a ton with Nagy. Nagy prioritized the offensive side of the ball over the defensive side and wanted to put the ball in the air and wanted to not be here and win games by running the football and defense. Like, I think that's the thing for me where, and we haven't seen Ben Johnson do it yet. I know it's going to take time, but just hearing from these coaches today, how Ben is speaking with them, how he's spending time with them, how he's spending time with these defensive players. Like, it does feel very different in that sense of like, I'm here to see this team win, not to see my side of the ball win.
Yeah, of course. And I mean, he wants to dominate. Like, I think it was Tremaine Edmonds who brought that up last week, a defensive player. And of course, the Lions scored a lot of points last year. And that's something that, as an offense, if you're playing in this offense, you're excited about. But the defensive players that we talked to last week felt like they were just as excited to be a part of a team that can run it up on the scoreboard in a competitive way. And because it's their job then to prevent the other team from trying to get their, to get right and, do the same. So to me, that's a mindset that transcends like just being on the offense, and an offense that can score a ton of points. It's something that the defense has to buy into too if you want to be a successful team.
Was there a nugget today that you heard either in the one-on-ones or in the press conferences that you were like, oh, that's interesting. We'll tuck that away for a later day.
I think the Eric Bieniemy thing is going to be like him coaching the offense, like him coaching running backs here in this offense, and he's got a lot of experience. So he started out coaching running backs in Minnesota. Like the first NFL job for him was in the mid 2000s, coaching Adrian Peterson, Toby Gebhardt, like all of these guys. Like when he was still pretty young himself.
Toby Gebhardt. I forgot about that.
Like, and I'm God, it's
that's a name.
It's funny because I found a video probably like 2 or 3 weeks ago of like training camp from them, and I think Adrian was late to I don't know if this wasn't Hard Knocks, but it was something.
Yeah, he shows up late to practice because he's like, "Why are you late?" I was getting my ankles taped.
He's
that's
like,
all right. We'll find you.
Like we'll like it was an accountability lesson. And hearing Eric Bieniemy, like he kept mentioning the standard. Obviously, we don't know what the standard is, and they probably won't ever like fully define it until like you get in season. Like a lot of these are platitudes. Like they just want to make sure that everybody knows you have to come here and come in here to work.
Yeah.
But kind of pressing Eric Bieniemy on the reputation. Like, hey, Ben Johnson says, quote, you're going to coach the piss out of these running backs. You've got, this reputation for coaching players hard. Is it fair? And, there's a moment where he kind of laughed. He's like, I don't know where any of this stuff's coming from, but it's interesting to me to see he's gotten a lot of opportunities in the NFL. He's clearly doing something right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I don't think he'd be around if he wasn't. And I think back to 2 years ago. Do you remember during training camp when Washington players, when he was the OC, were like openly like going to Ron Rivera and talking about it? These players asked for it. So careful what you wish for. If it ends up being too much, then maybe they bit off more than they can chew. But I thought Eric Bieniemy had a pretty consistent message about the type of coach he's going to be. And he does have the experience of being a play caller. And now he's back in a running back role for the first time, coaching running backs in a long time, where it's strictly, that's what he does. It's not
his last job doing that? Was it
a position coach somewhere in Kansas City before he became the OC.
I thought he was he a running backs coach in KC though?
I think it was either quarterbacks first and then OC. But that was his last time he was a position coach because then he was the OC at Washington and then UCLA and then running backs here. Like someone had asked him just about, do you feel like you're going to have to kind of combat, like, you've got the play caller mindset. He's like, no, like I'm here to be the best running back coach I can be. And that's, I think Al Harris, or he had mentioned Al Harris in that too. Like these are former players. Bieniemy played in the late 90s at running back.
Yep.
Obviously, Al Harris played. Antoine Randall played. There is something to be said. JT Barrett played. I mean, he was
Every
a practice
time I think about
member.
Al Harris, I just think we're going to get the ball and we're going to score. Like, all right.
But there is something when Ben Johnson's forming his staff based on former players, that's the Detroit model.
Yeah.
That's what Dan Campbell did. And I think that's something that's really rubbed off on him about how do you get through to your players? Your players who want to be coached hard, they want accountability. Well, have the guys who did it at the highest level. Antoine Randall coached in a Super Bowl, and he won a Super Bowl as a player when he was with Pittsburgh. No better person, I think, for Rome Odunze personally to be around in his second season, because you've got somebody who just reminded me of when I covered Minnesota and they'd made a coaching change at wide receiver going into Justin Jefferson's second year. They brought in Keenan McCardle, who was obviously had a fantastic career for the Jacksonville Jaguars. They felt that he needed a thoroughbred. Like he needed a coach to coach a thoroughbred. Like you couldn't take a chance of like screwing up this guy's development or maybe not getting him on the right track with just anybody. Like you needed somebody who would walk the walk and talk the talk. That's what these players have in Antoine Randall. And you can take a look at Detroit's room. Obviously, developing anybody from like a first round pick and Jamison Williams and Amon-Ra St. Brown all the way down to Tim Patrick. Like there's a variety of experiences in this room too. And for Antoine, he's going to have to coach DJ very differently than he's going to have to coach a second-year player who could go a lot of different directions if his development goes a number of different ways. So I think he's got the biggest challenge of anybody on this team in terms of coaches, because there is such a big gap between your two star receivers of experience. But like Eric Bieniemy, because that's the original point I was on, like Al Harris, like Antoine Randall, like having people who have done it and done it at a high level, I think that was a priority for Ben Johnson very clearly in the way that he formed the staff. And, you know, I think players respond to that better.
Yeah, and I'll say this even right about the video. The part that I love about it, which I think he will bring here as well, was the beginning of it is that's all right. We'll find you. You know what I mean? You getting your ankles tanked? That's great. You still late? We'll find you. Don't worry about it. And then after that, he's like, we can work with this. If you need to be here
Came back
earlier,
to
if
him
if
and,
there's
like,
something
offered a
that
solution.
let's do this. Let's see if I can set a meeting aside just for you if you need to get that treatment beforehand. Like I think that's something that will benefit. And I know I've probably been the hardest person on DeAndre Swift since he showed up here, right? But that's something that DeAndre Swift may need. I loved when he was talking on the podcast with Joniak, right? And I think a lot of people took it as a slap in the face, basically saying that he didn't want DeAndre Swift to be here. To me, I took it as coaching. He talked about, listen, he knows he can hit that home run, but we need him to know that he can get 4.5 yards up the
Sure.
middle of the field here. But in between the tackles is what he said. And I think this coaching has started now, even with how some of these guys were joking, right? Challenging their players in the press conference today. I love Richard Hightower telling Devin Duvernay, your name's not Devin right now, it's Duvernay.
I thought that was the best. That was the quietest one-liner. Like that one kind of snuck under the radar. But that, I mean, it was funny because, like, obviously Devin Duvernay has done a lot of really good things. He was an all-pro receiver, but there is a more famous Devin here. That it's kind of like making your guys work for it and earn it. Like it's not a slight to Devin Duvernay. It's just more of you need to.
You ain't Devin Hester.
Yeah, and you've got to earn your keep.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing where
that's the accountability part.
That exactly where I was going. The accountability that this team is going to be able to or this coaching staff is going to bring to this team. I love how you say it, right? Be careful what you wish for, because there's inevitably going to be, it's football. Guys are going to butt heads. There's a lot of testosterone going on in that room. Somebody's going to be like, I need you to get off my back. This what you said you wanted. Yeah. Those are the moments where it's like, okay, are you going to be able to adjust to the completely different style that is in here? Even hearing how a lot of things went last year, right? Like, is the offense or the defense going to be able to adjust to Ben Johnson walking in the room where it seems like Flus wasn't spending a ton of time there? And he's like, let's make sure we're getting this together. Like almost keeping an eye and making sure that everybody's on their P's and Q's here. To me, it's the thing that the fact that it's starting now, this is how, and I'm not saying they're going to go win a Super Bowl, but this is how you see championship teams develop. We are 2 weeks into an off-season program where basically they came in and lifted.
Sure.
And we're seeing this kind of stuff and hearing these kind of stories already. That excites me about this upcoming season.
Yeah, you got to lay the foundation now. Like you've got to find a way to put the pieces in order early, so then you have like a floor built, like, and that takes time. But I think back to Ben Johnson's first season. I had asked JT Barrett about this. Like that was JT's first, I think it was his first year in Detroit.
Yeah.
Because he had played.
He was still playing, right?
He played 2018 was when he went into the league. He started with the Saints, Seahawks, Saints, and I think he went to the CFL for a little bit. But his first true coaching gig with Ben was in 2022, and that's when the Lions had the 1-6 start, whatever how bad it was, but they finished 9-7 that year, or 10-7.
10-7.
And there obviously was a big jump made at the end of the year, and it's about like, how do you I'm curious to see for Ben Johnson, if things don't go right, like what did the culture you established back in the spring, does it kind of is that your baseline when things are crazy?
Yeah.
Like if things don't go right. And, clearly back then they did enough to be able to rise from some really tough circumstances early in the season and finish on a high note to then where they went to the NFC Championship the following year. So it's, there's a lot to like about what you're hearing right now about how they're trying to set the groundwork for what they hope will then launch them into a successful remaining part of the offseason or next phase.
The one thing that I heard today, and I'm sure you got a chance to hear it from a couple of guys as well. From Dennis Allen, I heard this, from Al Harris, I heard this, was this year we're coming in. I haven't had a chance to coach any of these guys yet. Everyone starts at a clean slate. And I think that conversation came up from a lot of questions about Tyreek Stevenson. I asked them, how do you coach him to the point where he can be that aggressive guy but he doesn't cross that line.
Sure.
And Dennis Allen essentially was like, listen, like, I haven't seen him. I haven't coached him yet, but, he wasn't highly penalized last year. And I think you want that fire. Don't do things that hurt the team. That's the message that he sends to Tyreek Stevenson. I I love the fact that everybody gets a chance because there are talented players on this team who last year clearly the environment was not the best for them. And I think that it got to them and they made mistakes because of it. I think Tyreek is that, right? The accountability being the word. We heard Caleb in the Esquire magazine, how that situation was handled really kind of set the wedge that there was between the players and the coaching staff.
And if the coaching staff's handling it one way, like Declan Doyle kept talking about the trickle down effect in the smaller session this afternoon. If the coaching staff's handling it one way, the players are gonna do the same thing. So it does really start with how the coaches are being told how to coach from Ben Johnson and the standard that they're keeping themselves to. Because then your players are gonna. If you set the baseline, the players have no choice but to at least hit that, if not exceed it.
Yeah, I
want to be
it.
successful.
I thought today was very insightful. I thought that we heard a lot from a bunch of different people. Was there anybody else that you wanted to hit on in the pod that you talked to today?
Trying to think. I think back to Antoine Randall
In the one-on-one.
In the one-on-ones.
Yeah.
I mean, the stuff that I asked him about the stumble bum play and just kind of hearing how they installed that, and the thing that people keep talking about is just the level of detail here that Ben Johnson is, Caleb mentioned it last week, why he was excited, the creativity element. I'm really curious to see how soon that part shows up and how soon players are able to grasp onto, because this is all going to be when they start, going through base stuff in a month, it's all going to be very vanilla.
Yeah.
But when can players start to sense, okay, that Ben's thinking about this a little differently. Ben may have seen something and he thinks that the players can handle all the intricacies of this one play that they're trying to install because their fundamentals are a certain level.
Yeah.
How did the fundamentals here get raised? Because that's the only way that you can have the level of execution requires that if you have a really creative offense. So I'm curious to see how that part goes forward.
Yeah, I thought that was very intriguing. Again, hearing from a different coach, but hearing from Al Harris, where he was talking, it was JT Barrett. I asked him about, how are you going to make Caleb's life not easier, but I guess I want to say that again. My bad. I didn't know. I was unfamiliar with your game, Ben. But what hurdles do you think Caleb's going to have to overcome in being under center? He's like, listen, he's going to go through some struggles of trying to figure out scheme. He's going to have so many reps on this. He's going to have so much to nail down the fundamentals of this thing that it's not something that we're worried about right now. And I think hearing that, hearing just the fundamentals being thrown around and the standard that they're going to set. We talked about it before the pod, right? This feels like the standard is the standard kind of staff.
I was going to hear that.
I thought we were going to get it. I thought we were going to get it.
It came close.
Those are the things, though, where it's okay, you can see why Ben Johnson has been successful. You can see why Den Allen has had success in his time in the NFL and how he's been able to build these defenses up. It does feel cohesive right now, and to feel that way now, not to say that that's weird, but it is. You've got so many different people from so many different walks of life, and they're all preaching the same message. That does seem a little bit different than what we saw last season.
Yeah. I mean, it especially where it's cohesive right now. It's a new staff. Last year was not a new staff except for the offensive staff that was clearly on a different page than the defensive staff that had been here for an entire, 2 years before that. So I think that factors into everybody's starting at the same point. And that's to the benefit of the team now, because the players are all starting at the same point that the coaches are, and the coaches have to be the ones that lead. And then your players, if it works out, they follow and they execute it, and it looks better than it did last year.
Yeah, we'll see what ends up happening this season. I love what we're hearing right now. I'm still at 9 wins, Courtney. I'm not drinking the Kool-Aid. I'm still at 9 wins.
That's smart.
I'm not drinking the Kool-Aid. I think first off,
the
schedule's ridiculous this year. We were looking at that.
We're about a month away from that coming out too.
How have we played Washington so many times in Washington? We got the Giants again, which is, I'm not as worried about that game, but I mean, I guess I'm worried about everyone. The division itself is ridiculous. There's so many games this year. The Bengals are on the schedule again this year. There's so many games this year where it's just this is not going to be like Ben Johnson comes in and he's the savior and we win 17 games. Like, this is going to be a tough first season for Ben Johnson to have to learn to coach it.
Absolutely. I think it's going to, I mean, you're in the division, which is not going to get any easier. Everybody's got a quarterback now, and it's, you're getting thrown into the deep end head first. There's not any easy teams, especially in the NFC North, that are on your schedule.
Straight into the fire. We'll see what Ben Johnson's able to do. For Courtney Cronin, your boy Pat the Designer, back at it again. Let us know how you guys feel in the comments below. Do you like what you're hearing from this coaching staff early on? Hit that like button, subscribe to the page, man. Y'all stay safe out there, Chicago. Big Bird down. One love. Peace.